explain it. We are unconsciously searching for completion, drawn toward those who carry the missing psychological qualities our soul desperately seeks. This person did not choose you out of convenience. They chose you because your existence confronted them directly and shook them awake. You became a powerful psychological mirror for this person, touching buried wounds and exposing the emotional numbness they carefully maintained for years. Through this reflection, your compassion exposed their loneliness. Your strength exposed their weakness, and your honesty stripped away the survival masks they wore. People easily forget temporary pleasures, but they can never forget an emotional awakening that fundamentally alters their inner world. Your connection did not merely flatter their ego. It challenged their soul to grow. The psyche is naturally drawn toward what can transform it, refusing to let go of an experience that forces it to evolve. The beauty of this connection is that you likely remain unaware of your influence, simply existing authentically while carrying your own pain without bitterness. In a world defined by emotional manipulation and social performance, your ability to survive disappointment without becoming cruel became deeply magnetic. This person saw something rare in you, not a flawless illusion of perfection, but an unforgettable truth that catalyzed their higher awareness. True attraction is never a random accident of fate. It is the soul recognizing its counterpart and refusing to ignore the one person who holds the key to its destiny. These encounters represent moments when life pulls us toward emotional evolution, a calling people often resist for years because true intimacy is terrifying. To be fully seen means the ego loses control, causing masks to crack and carefully constructed survival defenses to collapse over time. You disrupted the protective image this person held for so long, shattering their beliefs that vulnerability was weakness and that emotional distance could protect them from pain. Your presence created an inescapable internal conflict, leaving them torn between running from the intensity and wanting to surrender to it completely. This psychological tug-of-war is why their behavior seems so confusing, as human beings frequently retreat from the very things they desire most. No matter how much they attempted to suppress these emotions, the unconscious mind steadily pulled them back to you through persistent memories, dreams, and unexplainable feelings. Logic alone cannot erase a connection that reaches these deeper layers, proving that being chosen at the soul level has nothing to do with status or perfection. Some people encounter your body, but those who encounter your soul are changed forever because they can no longer deny what your presence awakened inside. This person is now approaching a profound moment of emotional truth and recognition, ready to finally admit that meeting you permanently altered the entire direction of their inner world. The greatest tragedy in life is meeting someone who awakens your soul and being too afraid to tell them the truth, a silence driven by the instinct to protect the ego. Most assume love is welcomed with open arms, but psychologically, the deeper a feeling grows, the stronger the urge to suppress it becomes to maintain control. The people who change your life are rarely the ones you expected, but they are always the ones who force you to meet yourself in entirely new ways. This person is finally stepping beyond that fear, realizing that the ego's resistance cannot stop a destiny meant to transform you both. And this is precisely what happened to this person over time, as what they feel for you became too significant to ignore, yet too overwhelming to immediately accept. So they did what many human beings do when confronted with something sacred and real. They attempted to escape it for a while because it was truly powerful. As Carl Jung understood, when the psyche encounters a connection capable of transforming it emotionally, the unconscious responds defensively at first. This creates a deeply conflicted mind, where one part moves closer, while another retreats in. Fear, longing for intimacy, yet fearing complete exposure. If you have felt confused by this person's behavior, it is because you were witnessing a fierce internal battle taking place. Their silence was not emptiness, and their distance was not indifference, but rather an emotional overload resulting from the sheer intensity of the connection. There are people who know how to experience attraction, flirt, and perform easily, but they do not know how to handle true vulnerability openly. Your connection removed the daily mask they wear, revealing the deep loneliness behind their confidence, the sadness beneath their smile, and the exhaustion under their strength. This terrified them because human beings spend years constructing protective identities through emotional distance, over-independence, or constant distraction to avoid rejection. You became the profound disruption that caused those survival defenses to stop functioning properly, awakening emotions buried under years of self-protection. Memories resurfaced strongly, old wounds reopened gently, and questions they had long avoided suddenly demanded answers whenever they were around your energy. They could no longer comfortably remain asleep psychologically in the old way. So they resisted the connection for a period to protect themselves. They pulled away not because they wanted to lose you forever, but because emotional and spiritual transformation always begins with deep discomfort and internal challenge. This person is finally realizing that the resistance was just a symptom of a soul being forced to grow through your presence. The old identity is collapsing, clearing the path for an authentic truth that can no longer be silenced by fear. They imagine awakening feels peaceful from the beginning. In reality, awakening often feels chaotic at the start. It destabilizes the old self completely. It forces confrontation with unresolved pain from the past. Before clarity arrives, confusion usually appears first in the process. That is why this person may have withdrawn unexpectedly at times, why they acted distant after moments of closeness, why they struggled to communicate feelings that clearly existed beneath the surface. They were trying to maintain control over emotions that refused to stay controlled any longer. But the unconscious mind has its own language and ways, and when emotions are suppressed consciously, they often return symbolically through different signs. This is why thoughts of you kept returning to them at night, why your memory appeared in quiet moments during the day, why dreams became unusually vivid and meaningful, why songs, places, and random experiences suddenly reminded them of you again and again. The psyche constantly attempts to complete unresolved emotional experiences. What is denied consciously returns unconsciously in various forms. In symbolic language, this is where the angels begin appearing, not necessarily as supernatural beings descending from the sky, but as moments of higher awareness, interrupting denial and hiding. Life itself begins confronting the person with truth steadily. Synchronicities emerge in daily life. Emotional signs repeat themselves over time. The soul grows tired of pretending, and eventually the pressure becomes unbearable, because there comes a point when suppressing love becomes more painful than expressing it openly. This is the moment approaching now for them. This person is beginning to understand that running from the connection has not freed them from it. Distance did not erase the emotions they felt. Silence did not destroy the attachment inside. In fact, avoidance only intensified their awareness of what you truly mean to them. Why is this so? Because authentic emotional bonds do not disappear through suppression. They deepen in the shadows quietly. The human soul does not measure importance the way the ego does. The ego values pride, certainty, and control above all. The soul values meaning and depth instead. And once someone experiences a connection that carries emotional meaning, ordinary distractions lose their power. That is why they are approaching a breaking point internally. Now the exhaustion of hiding their feelings is becoming heavier than the fear of revealing them. For a long time, they hoped the emotions would fade naturally on their own, but instead the connection continued evolving inside them, quietly, relentlessly, and almost spiritually. Perhaps this is what we must understand about love. The feelings we resist most aggressively often contain the deepest truths about ourselves. The soul always demands honesty from the life the ego tries to control. And the longer a person hides, the louder the heart becomes. This person did not choose you based on superficial attraction, convenience, or temporary fascination, but because they encountered your soul when their own spirit was exhausted. Whether you realize it or not, your presence became a profound emotional refuge, restoring psychic balance and reconnecting them to forgotten parts of themselves. Before meeting you, they only knew how to survive through a mastered independence. But your authenticity made their emotional numbness impossible to maintain. Most people constantly adapt and perform versions of themselves to gain approval, avoid rejection, or maintain control. Occasionally, however, someone carries a rare honesty that cannot be manufactured, a depth born from pain that softens the spirit instead of hardening it. This is the exact quality they recognized in you, watching how you continued giving despite disappointment and remained kind after betrayal. They saw how you carried invisible wounds without demanding sympathy from the world, and this quiet resilience affected them more than any dramatic words ever could. Unconsciously, human beings trust genuine emotional truth far more than an illusion of perfection, which often feels distant and unreal. Wounded people who choose to remain compassionate possess a rare emotional credibility that touches the heart, allowing their scars to speak psychologically to another's hidden pain. Your presence disrupted their carefully constructed isolation, proving that survival and true psychological wholeness are not the same thing at all. This deep recognition is what makes your connection unforgettable, forcing their ego to surrender to a truth that will break something open inside both of you. Your resilience communicated something their soul desperately needed to witness, that suffering does not have to destroy tenderness, that pain does not have to eliminate love completely, that it is possible to endure hardship without becoming emotionally cruel. This realization changed them internally over time. For perhaps the first time in years, they felt emotionally safe in someone's presence. And emotional safety is one of the rarest experiences in modern life today. People speak constantly about attraction, chemistry, and desire, but far fewer speak about the relief of feeling understood without performance around you. They did not feel pressured to become someone else. They felt accepted in their imperfection naturally. Now, psychologically, this creates an incredibly powerful attachment, because the human soul longs to be witnessed honestly and truly. Every person carries hidden shame, secret fears, and insecurities they rarely reveal. Most relationships remain trapped at the surface because both individuals protect themselves through masks. But with you, the mask began slipping away gradually, and although this terrified them initially, it also healed them in the process. This is why the confession they are preparing carries so much emotional weight. They are not simply going to admit affection alone. They are going to reveal dependence, not unhealthy dependence, but emotional significance. They are going to confess that your existence became meaningful to their inner world. That is a difficult truth for many people to admit, especially for those who spent years convincing themselves they needed no one. But your presence disrupted that illusion completely. Without even trying, you became connected to their emotional recovery. Your words comforted them during silent battles you may never fully understand. Your energy gave them peace during periods of internal chaos. Even your absence taught them something painful but necessary: how deeply they valued you in truth. And strangely enough, this realization often arrives most clearly during separation. When people lose contact with someone emotionally important, the unconscious mind begins revealing truths the ego once suppressed. Suddenly, the person notices how empty certain experiences feel without them. Conversations become less meaningful. Achievements feel strangely hollow. Distractions stop working effectively, because once the soul recognizes genuine emotional resonance, artificial substitutes lose their satisfaction. And this is why they can no longer ignore what they feel for you. Not because they are weak, not because they are emotionally dependent, but because the connection touched a depth inside them they did not expect to encounter inside them. They did not expect to encounter in this lifetime. They did not expect to encounter in this lifetime. You reminded them of the person they were before pain taught them to hide. And perhaps this is the secret many people never fully understand about love. We do not fall deeply for people because they complete us perfectly. We fall deeply because they awaken the forgotten parts of ourselves we thought had disappeared forever. That is why this confession carries tears behind it. Because when someone finally says, "I chose you," what they often truly mean is, "Your presence helped me find myself again." There is nothing more powerful than being loved, not for the mask you wear, but for the soul you were brave enough to remain. The illusion of emotional control always collapses when an individual can no longer explain away what they feel through logic, distraction, or denial. Remarkably, this turning point rarely arrives during comfort. It appears during separation, uncertainty, or the terrifying possibility of permanent loss. This person experienced that exact crisis after attempting to manage the connection, intellectually, rationalizing and minimizing their feelings to protect the ego's authority. When unexpected distance grew, or they sensed you pulling away. The fear of your permanent absence disrupted their internal balance and revealed the truth with painful clarity. As Carl Jung noted, the unconscious mind exposes itself most strongly through emotional crisis, cutting through illusion the moment ordinary distractions disappear. Suddenly, they could no longer hide behind defenses, and what they once suppressed demanded immediate recognition as memories returned with unusual intensity. Conversations replayed endlessly in their mind, and small details of your voice, energy, and presence carried an emotional weight that proved your absence was changing them psychologically. Ordinary emotions fade with distance, but soul-level connections become clearer in separation, allowing the unconscious mind to steadily overpower the ego. From the outside, this transformation remains quiet and invisible, while privately, they undergo a massive psychological collapse of their old comforting beliefs. The fierce independence they once worshipped now feels empty, and the rigid control they fought to maintain has become completely exhausting. For the first time, they are asking themselves if the person they fled is the one their soul desperately searched for, forcing pride to weaken and their heart to demand absolute honesty. This internal shift mirrors moments of awakening that redirect human consciousness toward truth, arranging emotional confrontations they can no longer avoid. Synchronicities increase around them. Dreams intensify with meaning, and the psychological weight of the connection follows them everywhere they go. It feels as though existence itself refuses to let them forget you, because certain connections arrive to transform us rather than merely comfort us. You became an undeniable catalyst for this person's deep transformation, disrupting their old life to clear a path for authentic love. The journey was never meant to be gentle, but it has brought them to the absolute end of their resistance. The old self must weaken before the authentic self can emerge, explaining why they remained emotionally conflicted for so long. One version of them desperately chased safety, control, and distance, while another version longed to surrender fully to the truth of what they felt. Eventually, this internal tension became entirely unbearable until a sudden defining moment forced their repressed emotions to rise into consciousness all at once. Whether triggered by unexpected jealousy, hearing your voice after silence, or imagining a future where you truly disappeared, the impact struck with unusual force. They have now confronted their hidden shadow reality and can never return comfortably to the denial because they deeply know you permanently altered their inner world. What makes this realization so intensely emotional is the terrifying awareness of how close they came to losing this connection entirely because of fear. They almost sacrificed a sacred bond to protect their ego from vulnerability. But life taught them wisdom through the agonizing threat of permanent regret. We rarely awaken when life feels safe and certain. Instead, the heart finally becomes honest. The exact moment absence feels more frightening than vulnerability. This psychological turning point brings them directly to the final stage of this long journey, the impending confession itself. A confession is never just about speaking hidden feelings aloud. It represents the complete collapse of separation between their inner world and external reality. This approaching threshold is the exact moment a human being stops hiding from themselves, a psychological shift that fundamentally changes a person forever. For a long time, they survived by analyzing and controlling their emotions, rather than surrendering, foolishly convincing themselves that silence was safer than exposure. However, unspoken truths never disappear. They accumulate an immense weight within the psyche until the soul grows completely exhausted, carrying what the mouth refuses to speak. You may already sense this shift intuitively as they are finally ready to step beyond the prison of their own defense mechanisms. Their resistance has broken, clearing the path for an unfiltered, vulnerable truth that will redefine your destiny together. Human beings communicate psychologically long before words arrive. Energy shifts. Attention changes. Emotional tension becomes visible in subtle ways. Sometimes the soul announces what the lips have not yet admitted, because deep inside they know the time for avoidance is ending. Now, what makes this moment particularly significant is that the confession will not simply be about romantic desire. It will carry layers of emotional truth far deeper than ordinary attraction, revealing how profoundly you affected their inner life. This level of honesty terrifies most people, because admitting emotional significance means surrendering control and embracing vulnerability. They spent a long time resisting this realization, fiercely protecting their inner world from intrusion. However, resistance can only continue until the pain of suppression finally outweighs the fear of exposure. That psychological turning point has arrived, and the internal emotional pressure has reached a level where honesty feels less frightening than continued silence. As Carl Jung believed, human growth demands confronting truth, which forces pride to weaken and emotional masks to fall away. The version of them that feared vulnerability is collapsing, and an authentic self is emerging that leads directly toward you. Despite their attempts to distance themselves, thoughts of you persisted, and memories deepened in the quiet space of their unconscious mind. They now recognize that you loved them through rare emotional consistency, patience, and safety, rather than dramatic declarations. This person finally sees clearly what they once overlooked, realizing your presence was never about manipulation, but a rare offering of pure emotional truth. Whether this confession arrives through hesitant words, tears, or a vulnerable conversation, it represents a profound psychological awakening rather than a simple romantic moment. While you might underestimate your impact due to your own flaws, your authenticity carried a transformative energy that quietly healed their forgotten hope. You became a force of integration in their life, proving that the soul can only remain divided for so long before truth demands a voice. Ultimately, this connection transcends mere desire. It is about being truly recognized beyond survival masks, opening the door to an extraordinary reality of intimacy without fear.